Atlanta, Georgia, 7:30 a.m. August 7, 2025. The air in Courtroom 3 of the Fulton County Courthouse hung heavy with the hum of anticipation. The kind that settles into the bones of a city like Atlanta, vibrant, proud, but always wrestling with its shadows. The room, with its polished oak benches and high ceilings, was a stage for justice, or so it was meant to be. A few lawyers shuffled papers, their whispers blending with the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. At the front, a young defendant, barely 17, sat hunched beside his public defender, his eyes darting nervously toward the empty judge's bench. The morning's docket promised routine: a theft charge, a bond hearing, nothing to stir the pulse of a city accustomed to bigger dramas. But then, a single act shattered that illusion. A fist flew through the air, connecting with a sharp crack against the cheek of a woman standing near the counsel table. The room froze. Gasps rippled through the sparse crowd: reporters, clerks, a handful of onlookers. The woman, a black woman in her late 50s with silver curls pinned neatly at the nape of her neck, didn't flinch. She didn't touch her face, didn't stagger. Her brown eyes, sharp as a blade, locked onto the man who'd struck her. Sergeant James Carter. A veteran cop with a chest puffed full of unearned confidence. He'd mistaken her for someone insignificant, someone who didn't belong in his courtroom. He was wrong. She was Judge Olivia Harper, the first black woman to sit on Atlanta's highest bench. And in the next 4 minutes, his world would begin to unravel. Olivia Harper stood motionless, her gaze pinning Carter like a specimen under glass. The sting on her cheek was nothing compared to the fire igniting in her chest. She'd spent 3 decades in these marble halls, first as a defense attorney clawing for justice for clients who couldn't afford it, then as a prosecutor cutting through corruption like a surgeon, and now as a judge. Her presence a quiet revolution in a city that still whispered old prejudices. At 58, she carried herself with an authority that didn't need a robe to command respect, though she hadn't yet donned hers this morning. Her tailored blazer and crisp white blouse spoke of precision, her silver-streaked hair a testament to years of battles won and lost. Carter, a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s with a jawline that screamed legacy, stood a few feet away, his hand still half-raised, as if surprised by his action. His police uniform gleamed under the lights, the badge, a shield he'd long believed made him untouchable. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he snapped, his voice loud enough to bounce off the walls. He hadn't recognized her, hadn't expected a judge to be standing among the clerks and attorneys before the session began. To him, she was just another face, one he could silence with a fist. The courtroom held its breath. A young reporter. Ethan Brooks scribbled furiously in the gallery, his pen scratching against the weight of the moment. The public defender, a nervous man named Daniel Lee, clutched his briefcase, his teenage client shrinking further into his seat. At the back, a bailiff named Michael Evans, a towering figure with a face carved from stone, took a step forward, his hand resting lightly on his belt. Olivia raised a hand, stopping him. She didn't need protection, not yet. "Sergeant Carter," she said, her voice low but cutting through the silence like a whip. "Do you make a habit of striking women in courtrooms, or is this a special occasion?" The words landed hard, each syllable deliberate. Carter's eyes widened, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. He glanced around, as if expecting someone to step in, to laugh it off, to tell him this was all a misunderstanding. No one did. The clerk, a young woman named Mia Torres, stood frozen behind her desk, her hands trembling over a stack of files. "I didn't know you were," Carter started, but Olivia cut him off. "You didn't know who I was," she said, stepping closer, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "So you thought it was acceptable to assault someone you assumed was beneath you?" Carter's jaw tightened, his face flushing red. He was a third-generation cop, a man who'd built a career on the streets of Atlanta where his name carried weight, and his mistakes were buried under favors and handshakes. His record was a patchwork of complaints, excessive force, intimidation, misconduct, but none had ever stuck. He was the kind of officer who walked into rooms expecting them to bend, and for years they had. "You were in my way," he said, doubling down, his voice rising. "I told you to move, and you ignored me. I don't have time for." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "For what, Sergeant? For respect? For the law?" The room seemed to shrink around her words. She stepped onto the raised platform, ascending to the bench with a grace that made the act feel like a coronation. She didn't sit, not yet. She turned, facing Carter fully, her presence filling the space. "Let the record show," she said, her voice now amplified by the microphone on the bench, "that Sergeant James Carter has just admitted to striking a sitting judge in open court without provocation." A murmur swept through the gallery. Ethan Brooks' pen stopped, his eyes darting to his phone as he tapped out a quick message to his editor. This wasn't just a story, it was a bombshell. Carter's posture shifted, his bravado cracking like thin ice. "I didn't know you were the judge," he protested, his voice louder now, almost desperate. "You weren't in your robe. You were just standing there, acting like." Olivia leaned forward slightly, her gaze unyielding. "Acting like what, Sergeant? Like I belonged here?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Carter's mouth opened, then closed, his tongue darting to the corner of his lips as if searching for a defense that wouldn't come. He glanced toward the back of the room where two other officers stood, their faces unreadable. They didn't move to help him. No one did. Olivia's mind raced, but her face remained a mask of calm. She'd seen men like Carter be foremen, who mistook their badges for crowns, who believed the system was built to carry them. She'd read his file years ago when she was still a prosecutor. Complaints of excessive force, allegations of planted evidence, and witnesses who suddenly recanted every time the case is dissolved, swept away by a well-placed phone call or a missing report. But this time, he'd made a mistake in front of witnesses under the unblinking eye of courtroom cameras. This time, he'd struck her. And Olivia Harper didn't break, she built. "Mr. Evans," she said, turning to the bailiff. Michael stepped forward, his broad shoulders squared. "Escort Sergeant Carter to holding room A. He is not to leave this courthouse until I say otherwise." Carter's eyes widened, his fists clenching at his sides. "You can't do this," he shouted, taking a step toward the bench. Michael was there in an instant, his hand on Carter's arm, firm but professional. "Don't make this worse," Sergeant Michael said, his voice low but steady. The room buzzed as Carter was led away, his boots echoing against the floor. Olivia sat at last, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She glanced at the clerk, Mia, who was still pale, her fingers hovering over her keyboard. "Ms. Torres," Olivia said, "please enter into the record that Sergeant James Carter has been detained for assaulting a judicial officer in the performance of her duties. Ensure the courtroom surveillance footage is preserved." Mia nodded, her hands moving quickly now, as if relieved to have a task. Olivia turned her attention to the public defender, Daniel Lee, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Mr. Lee, your client's hearing is postponed until tomorrow. Take him out through the west exit. Ensure he's safe." Daniel nodded, guiding the teenager out. The boy's eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe as he glanced back at Olivia, as the courtroom emptied. Olivia remained at the bench, her gaze drifting to a file left on the counsel table. It wasn't part of the morning's docket. She stepped down, picked it up, and flipped it open. Inside was a single page of contract between the Atlanta Police Department and Vanguard Security, a private firm she'd never heard of. The numbers caught her eye. $2.3 million for consulting services, signed by a deputy commissioner whose name she recognized from city council meetings. Her instincts, honed over decades, prickled. This wasn't an accident. Someone had left this for her to find. She tucked the file under her arm and headed for her chambers, her heels clicking with purpose. The slap had been a spark, but this was kindling down in her chambers. Olivia set the file on her desk, its weight heavier than paper should be. The room was quiet, the walls lined with bookshelves and framed certificates, a testament to her. Climb from a public defender's cramped office to this. A knock broke the silence. Michael Evans stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Carter's in holding," he said, his voice steady but his eyes searching hers. "He's all ready. Making calls. Union reps on the way." Olivia nodded, unsurprised. "Let them come. They won't bury this one." She opened the file again, her fingers tracing the signature on the contract. "Michael, have you ever heard of Vanguard Security?" He frowned, shaking his head. "No, but I can ask around." Discreetly, she gave him a small nod. "Do it, and keep an eye on Carter. Men like him don't sit quietly." As Michael left, Olivia's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Back off, Judge Harper. Your daughter doesn't need to pay for your mistakes." Her breath caught, not out of fear, but fury. Emma, her 21-year-old daughter, was a junior at Emory University, studying journalism, blissfully unaware of the storm her mother was about to unleash. Olivia's fingers tightened around the phone. She'd spent her life protecting the vulnerable, but now the threat was personal. She dialed Michael's number. "I need a security detail on Emma." Now her voice was calm, but the edge was unmistakable. She set the phone down and stared at the contract again. Carter's punch had been a mistake, but this was deliberate. Someone was watching, someone with enough power to leave files and send threats. And Olivia was going to find them. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of routine signing orders, reviewing motions, but Olivia's mind was elsewhere. She called Sarah Mitchell, an internal affairs investigator with a reputation for being a bulldog. Sarah arrived within the hour, her short-cropped hair and no-nonsense demeanor a stark contrast to the polished chaos of the courthouse. "You've got balls, Judge," Sarah said, dropping into a chair across from Olivia's desk, calling out Carter in open court. "That's a hornet's nest." Olivia slid the Vanguard contract across the desk. "Then you'll love this." Sarah's eyes scanned the page, her expression darkening. "This is dirty money," she said. "Vanguard's been on our radar for years. Private security, shady contracts, ties to City Hall. But no one's ever pinned them down." Olivia leaned forward. "I'm not no one." Sarah agreed to dig into Vanguard, but she warned Olivia, "This goes higher than Carter. You're not just poking a bear, you're walking into its den." Olivia didn't blink. "Good. I want to know I'm coming." By noon, the courthouse was buzzing. Reporters lingered in the halls, their phones lighting up with alerts. Ethan Brooks, the young journalist from the morning session, had already posted a breaking story. Atlanta cop assaults judge in courtroom shock. Social media was ablaze. Hashtags like #JusticeForHarper trending alongside grainy footage. From a bystander's phone, Livia avoided the cameras, slipping out a side exit to meet with Daniel Lee, the public defender, in a quiet conference room. "Your client," she said, "the kid Carter arrested. What's his story?" Anguil hesitated, then sighed. "Malik Johnson, 17. Caught stealing car parts from a junkyard. Carter roughed him up pretty badly during the arrest. Kid swears he wasn't even at the scene until Carter dragged him there." Olivia's jaw tightened. She'd seen this before kids. Like Malik, caught in the crosshairs of cops like Carter, their lives collateral damage in a system that didn't care. "Get me his file," she said, And any complaints against Carter from the last 5 years? Daniel nodded, but his eyes were wary. Judge, you're playing with fire. Olivia's lips curved into a faint smile. Then let it burn. By afternoon, the union rep arrived, a slick man named Greg Walsh, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He met Olivia in her chambers, flanked by a lawyer from the Police Benevolent Association. Judge Harper Walsh said, his tone dripping with false warmth, "This is all a misunderstanding. Sergeant Carter's a decorated officer. He thought you were a disruptive spectator. Let's keep this out of the headlines, shall we?" Olivia leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled. A misunderstanding doesn't leave a bruise, Mr. Walsh, and a decorated officer doesn't swing first and ask questions later. Walsh's smile faltered. You push this, you're starting a war you can't win. The department's got long arms. Olivia stood, her presence filling the room. So do I, and mine holds a gavel. Walsh left, but the air in the courthouse grew heavier. By evening, Olivia was back in her chambers. The Vanguard contract spread out before her. She'd made calls, pulled strings, and found a name tied to the contract: Richard Lawson, Atlanta's mayor, whose re-election campaign had been suspiciously well-funded. She didn't have proof yet, but the pieces were falling into place. Her phone buzzed again. Another text, this one a photo. Emma, laughing with friends outside her dorm, unaware of the camera. The message read, "Pretty girl. Shame if something happened." Olivia's heart pounded, but her resolve hardened. She called Michael again. "I want Emma moved to a safe location tonight." Michael didn't argue. Done. But Olivia, you need to watch your back. This isn't just about Carter anymore. As night fell, Olivia stood at her chamber's window, the Atlanta skyline glittering beyond. The city was beautiful, but its beauty hid scars decades of inequality, corruption, and silence. Carter's punch had been personal, but the contract, the threats, the system protecting men like him, that was war. She turned back to her desk, pulling out a legal pad. Her handwriting was precise, each word a weapon. Vanguard Security, Richard Lawson, James Carter, complaints dismissed. She underlined the last word twice. This wasn't just about one cop, one punch. It was about a machine that had run too long, crushing anyone who dared to stand in its way. Olivia Harper wasn't just a judge, she was a reckoning. And she was just getting started. The Atlanta skyline glowed under a bruised purple dusk, its glass towers reflecting the last slivers of August light. Inside the Fulton County Courthouse, Judge Olivia Harper sat alone in her chambers. The silence, broken only by the faint hum of her desk lamp. The photograph on her phone stared back at her. Her daughter, Emma, 21, caught mid-laugh outside her Emory University dorm, oblivious to the camera that had captured her. The accompanying text was a cold blade. Don't dig deeper. Olivia's fingers tightened around the phone, her pulse steady, but her mind racing. The sting of James Carter's punch from the previous morning had faded, but the threat to her daughter was a fresh wound, one that cut deeper than any fist could. She wasn't just a judge anymore, she was a mother, and someone had just made this personal. Olivia dialed Michael Evans, her bailiff, her voice calm but unyielding. "Michael, I need Emma under protection. Move her to a safe house tonight. No one knows but you and me." Michael's response was immediate, his deep voice steady through the line. "I'm on it. She'll be safe by midnight." Olivia hung up, her gaze drifting to the Vanguard security contract still open on her desk. The $2.3 million deal, signed by a deputy commissioner with ties to Mayor Richard Lawson, was no accident. Someone had left it for her to find, a breadcrumb or a trap. Either way, Olivia was done playing defense. She stood, pacing the room, her heels muffled against the thick carpet. The courthouse was empty. the halls growing quiet as clerks and attorneys headed home. But Olivia's work was just beginning. She'd spent the day fielding calls, reporters hungry for quotes, the police union demanding a meeting, and a cryptic voicemail from an unknown number warning her to let it go. She hadn't. Instead, she'd called Sarah Mitchell, the internal affairs investigator who'd promised to dig into Vanguard. Sarah was due any minute, and Olivia needed answers before the city's power brokers could regroup. The door opened without a knock, and Sarah stepped in, her short-cropped hair damped from the evening humidity. She carried a thick manila folder. Her face grim. "You look like you haven't slept in a week," Sarah said, dropping into a chair. Olivia didn't smile. "Sleep's overrated. What did you find?" Sarah slid the folder across the desk. "Vanguard's a ghost. Shell company registered in Delaware, but the money trails back to Atlanta. They've got contracts with the police department, City Hall, and even the DA's office. Consulting, security, special projects, all vague enough to cover anything." Olivia flipped open the folder, her eyes scanning pages of financial records, emails, and redacted memos. One name appeared repeatedly: Rachel Turner, a senior assistant district attorney known for her sharp suits and sharper deals. Turner had dismissed at least 7 complaints against James Carter over the past decade, each one buried under technicalities or insufficient evidence. Olivia's jaw tightened. "Turner's been cleaning up after Carter for years," she said. Sarah nodded. "And not just Carter. There's a pattern: officers with long rap sheets, cases that never make it to trial, witnesses who suddenly change their stories. Turner's name is on everyone." Olivia leaned back, her mind piecing together the puzzle. "And Vanguard?" Sarah's eyes darkened. "They're the bank. Funding legal defenses, paying off witnesses, maybe even worse. The deputy commissioner who signed that contract, he's on the mayor's payroll. Richard Lawson's re-election campaign got a $500,000 boost last year from a PAC linked to Vanguard." Olivia's fingers drummed the desk. Richard Lawson, Atlanta's charismatic mayor, had built his career on promises of progress, new schools, safer streets, a united city. But Olivia had seen his kind before: polished men who spoke of change while guarding the status quo. If Lawson was tied to Vanguard, this wasn't just about a rogue cop. It was a machine, oiled with money and power, and Carter was just one cog. "We need more," Olivia said. "Something concrete, a witness, a recording, something they can't bury." Sarah hesitated, then pulled a USB drive from her pocket. "You're not gonna like this." She plugged it into Olivia's laptop, and a grainy audio file began to play. Carter's voice, unmistakable, filled the room. "If that kid talks, make sure he doesn't. You know how it works, Rachel. We've done it before." Turner's voice, cool and clipped, responded, "Already. Handled. The footage is gone, and the kid's too scared to testify. But we've got a problem, Harper's sniffing around." Carter laughed, a low, ugly sound. "Let her, she's just a judge. We've got friends higher than her." The recording cut off. Olivia's blood ran cold. "Where did you get this?" she asked. Sarah's lips pressed tightly. "A source. Someone in the precinct is tired of the game. But they won't come forward, not yet." Olivia stood, pacing again. The recording was dynamite, but it wasn't enough. She needed to connect the dots: Carter to Turner, Turner to Vanguard, Vanguard to Lawson. And she needed to do it before the threats to Emma escalated. Her phone buzzed again, another text. From an unknown number: "You can't protect her forever." Olivia's hand trembled, but she didn't reply. Instead, she called Michael. "Emma's safe?" she asked. "She's at the safe house," Michael confirmed. 2 marshals. With her round the clock. "But Olivia, this is bigger than we thought." I heard from a buddy in the precinct Carter's union is already spinning this as a heat-of-the-moment mistake. They're pushing for a suspension, not charges. Olivia's voice was steel. They can push all they want. He's not. Walking away from this, the next morning, Atlanta woke to chaos. Ethan Brooks's story had gone viral, the courtroom footage spreading like wildfire across social media. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse, their signs demanding justice. No badge above the law and protect Judge Harper. Inside, Olivia faced a different storm. The police union had filed a formal complaint accusing her of bias. Against law enforcement, Rachel Turner herself appeared in Olivia's chambers, her smile as sharp as a knife. "Judge Harper," Turner said, her voice smooth, "this doesn't have to escalate. Sergeant Carter made a mistake. He's willing to apologize publicly. Let's keep this civil." Olivia didn't stand, didn't offer her a seat. "Civil," she said, her tone icy. "He assaulted a judge in open court, Ms. Turner. That's not a mistake, it's a crime. And I'm curious, how many of his mistakes have you swept under the rug?" Turner's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "Be careful. Judge, you're making enemies you don't need." Olivia leaned forward. "I've been making enemies my whole life. It's how I got here." Turner left, but the pressure didn't. By noon, a motion had been filed to recuse Olivia from Carter's case, citing emotional compromise due to the assault. Olivia read the motion in her chambers, her lips curling into a grim smile. They were scared. Good. She called a press conference for 3 p.m., determined to take control of the narrative. But before she could prepare, Ethan Brooks knocked on her door, his face pale and his backpack slung over one shoulder. "Judge Harper," he said, his voice low, "I need to show you something." He handed her a flash drive. "I've been digging into Vanguard. Source sent me this last night, but I'm being followed. I think they know." Olivia took the drive, her heart sinking. Ethan was young, barely 25, with a fire in his eyes. That reminded her of herself at that age. "Get somewhere safe," she told him. "I'll handle this." The flash drive contained a bombshell, a spreadsheet detailing payments from Vanguard to a string of city officials, including Rachel Turner and a deputy mayor named Carl Bennett. One column listed discretionary funds tied to dismissed police misconduct cases, with Carter's name appearing 6 times. Another document was a redacted email from Turner to an unknown recipient. "The judge is a problem. Neutralize her before she digs deeper." Olivia's pulse quickened. This wasn't just corruption, it was a conspiracy. She called Sarah, who arrived with a laptop and a thermos of coffee. "We need to verify this," Sarah said, her fingers flying over the keys. "If it's real, it's enough to bring down half the city." Olivia nodded. "Then we move fast. Get it to the feds." By 2:30 p.m., the courthouse steps were packed with reporters, protesters, and curious onlookers. Olivia stepped to the podium, her blazer crisp despite the humid air. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward. She didn't flinch. "Yesterday," she began, her voice steady, "I was assaulted in my courtroom by a police officer who believed he was above the law. That officer, Sergeant James Carter, is now in custody. But this isn't about one man. It's about a system that protects him, a system that dismisses complaints, buries evidence, and threatens anyone who dares to speak out." She held up the flash drive, her eyes scanning the crowd. "I have evidence of a network of corruption, linking the Atlanta Police Department to private interests and public officials. I'm calling for a federal investigation into these ties." Starting with Vanguard Security and Assistant District Attorney Rachel Turner. The crowd erupted cheers, gasps, shouts. Ethan, watching from the back, scribbled notes, his hands shaking. Olivia stepped down, ignoring the barrage of questions. She'd lit the fuse. Now she had to survive the explosion. Back in her chambers, Olivia faced a new threat. A voicemail from Judge Thomas Bennett, her former mentor, waited on her phone. His voice was smooth, almost paternal. "Olivia, you're stirring up trouble you can't control. Drop this for your good. You don't know who you're up against." Olivia deleted the message, her heart heavy. Bennett had been her guide. When she was a young lawyer, the man who'd taught her to navigate the system's unwritten rules. Now, his name appeared in the Vanguard files linked to a dismissed case involving Carter. She didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was clear. Bennett wasn't just complicit, he was part of the machine. That night, Olivia couldn't go home. Michael had arranged a safe house for her as well, a nondescript apartment on the outskirts of Atlanta. She sat at a small table, the Vanguard files spread out before her. Sarah joined her, bringing takeout and more documents. "Feds are interested," Sarah said, unwrapping a sandwich. "They're pulling records on Vanguard as we speak. But Olivia, this goes higher than Lawson. There's a name in those files we haven't touched yet: Senator Paul Grayson." Olivia's eyes widened. Grayson was a rising star in Georgia. Politics, a man with White House ambitions. If he was involved, the stakes were astronomical. "We need proof," Olivia said. "Something undeniable." Sarah nodded. "I've got a contact in the FBI. They're willing to meet, but they want everything we have of the record." As midnight approached, Olivia's phone buzzed again. Another photo, this time of her walking out of the courthouse, her face circled in red. The message read, "You're running out of time." She showed it to Sarah, who cursed under her breath. "They're desperate," Sarah said. "That's why they're coming after you like this." Olivia stood, her resolve unshaken. Then we hit harder. She began drafting a letter to the Department of Justice, outlining everything: the recording, the spreadsheet, the threats. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Malik Johnson, the teenager Carter had framed. For Ethan Brooks, whose life was now at risk. For every person the system had crushed under its weight. The next morning, Atlanta was a powder keg. Protests swelled outside City Hall, with chants of justice for Harper echoing through the streets. Olivia met with Ethan in a coffee shop downtown, its windows fogged from the morning heat. He looked exhausted, his eyes darting to the door every few seconds. "They trashed my apartment last night," he said, his voice low. "Didn't take anything, just left a mess. It's a warning." Olivia handed him a burner phone. "Use this. Stay off the grid. I'll get you protection." Ethan nodded, but his hands shook as he took the phone. "Judge, why are you doing this? You could walk away." Olivia's gaze softened, but her voice was firm. "Because if I walk away, they win. And I've spent my life making sure they don't." By afternoon, the pressure intensified. A second motion to recuse Olivia was filed, this time backed by the mayor's office. Rachel Turner appeared on local news, calling the allegations against her baseless and accusing Olivia of weaponizing her position. Social media erupted with bots and trolls, spreading lies about Olivia's past: a fabricated scandal about a 2010 case, a doctored photo of her at a protest. Olivia ignored it all, focusing on the next move. She met with Sarah and an FBI agent, Carla Reyes, in a nondescript office across town. Carla was blunt. "You've got enough to start a fire, Judge, but we need more to make it stick." Grayson's name is in those files, but he's untouchable without hard evidence. "Get me a witness or a paper trail." Olivia nodded. "I'll get it." That evening, Olivia received a call from Michael. "Carter's talking," he said. "Not much, but he's dropping hints about a big player who calls the shots." "He's scared, Olivia. He knows he's done." Olivia's mind raced. Carter was a weak link. If she could break him, the whole network might collapse. She drove to the detention center, her security detail trailing close behind. Carter sat in a holding cell, his uniform replaced by a gray jumpsuit, his swagger gone. He looked up as Olivia entered, his eyes hollow. "You think you've won," he said, his voice low. "You have no idea what you're up against." Olivia leaned forward, her voice steady. "Then tell me, James, who's pulling your strings?" Carter's lips twitched, but he said nothing. She stood, leaving him with one last warning. "You're not the only one who can talk, and I'm not the only one listening." As Olivia left the detention center, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail from an unknown number. The voice was smooth, almost familiar, but laced with menace. "Judge Harper, you're playing a dangerous game. Step back, or your daughter won't be the only one who pays." Olivia froze, her heart pounding. She played the message again, trying to place the voice. It wasn't Carter, it wasn't Turner. It was someone higher, someone who knew how to hide. She forwarded the message to Sarah and Carla, her resolve hardening. The threats were proof she was getting close. Too close. By the next morning, the city was on edge. Protesters clashed with police outside the courthouse, and national news outlets had picked up the story. Olivia's press conference had ignited a movement, but it had also painted a target on her back. She met with Ethan again, this time in a park far from the city center. He handed her a new file, his hands steadier now. "My source came through," he said. "It's a Ledger Vanguard's real books. Payments to Grayson, Turner, and even Bennett. And there's a name you need to see, Marcus Vaughn." Olivia's breath caught. Vaughn was a former police chief, now a private consultant with ties to every major player in Atlanta. If he was involved, the rot went deeper than she'd imagined. Olivia returned to the safe house, the ledger burning a hole in her briefcase. She spread it out on the table, her eyes scanning the numbers, the dates, the names. It was a roadmap to corruption, a blueprint of a city betrayed. Sarah arrived, her face grim. "The feds are moving," she said. "They're raiding Vanguard's offices tomorrow. But Olivia, they're worried about you. These people don't play nice." Olivia nodded, her mind already on the next step. "Then we don't either," she said. She picked up her phone, dialing Carla Reyes. "I've got the ledger. It's enough to bring them down. But I need one more thing, public hearing. I want the world to see this." As the sun set over Atlanta, Olivia stood at the safe house window, the city's lights twinkling like stars in a storm. She was tired, but not broken. The threats, the lies, the weight of a city's secrets, they hadn't stopped her. They'd only made her stronger. Carter's punch had been the spark, but the ledger was the fuel. And Olivia Harper was about to set the whole machine ablaze. The Atlanta morning broke heavy with humidity, the kind that clung to the skin and made every breath feel like a negotiation. It was August 9th, 2025, and the city was a tinderbox, its streets simmering with protests, its airwaves crackling with outrage. Judge Olivia Harper stood at the window of a safe house on the city's edge, the skyline a jagged silhouette against the dawn. Her reflection in the glass was a study in resolve, silver curls pinned tight, brown eyes unyielding, the faint bruise on her cheek now a memory, but the fire it sparked still burning. The ledger from Ethan Brooks lay open on the table behind her, its pages a map of corruption Vanguard security. Rachel Turner, Senator Paul Grayson, and Marcus Vaughn, the former police chief turned shadow broker. The threats to her daughter Emma had only hardened Olivia's purpose. She wasn't just fighting for justice now. She was fighting for survival. Her phone buzzed, another anonymous message. "Last chance, Judge, walk away." She deleted it. Without a second glance, they thought they could scare her into silence. They didn't know Olivia Harper. She turned from the window, her blazer crisp despite the sleepless night. Sarah Mitchell, the internal affairs investigator, sat at the table. Her laptop open to a string of encrypted emails from their FBI contact. Carla Reyes. Michael Evans, Olivia's bailiff, leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, his eyes scanning the room like a sentinel. The ledger had changed everything. It wasn't just evidence, it was a weapon. It's detailing payments from Vanguard to a web of city officials, including Assistant District Attorney Rachel Turner and Senator Paul Grayson, whose name carried weight from Atlanta to Washington. But the most damning name was Marcus Vaughn, a man who'd once run the Atlanta Police Department with an iron fist and now operated in the shadows, brokering deals that kept men like James Carter untouchable. Olivia had requested a public hearing, set for noon today, to lay it all bare. She wasn't naive, she knew the risks. But she also knew the power of truth spoken in the open. Carla's team raided Vanguard's offices last night, Sarah said, her voice low but steady. They've got financial records, hard drives, even a server linked to Grayson's campaign. But they need a witness to tie it all together. Olivia nodded, her mind racing. Carter, she said, a tease. The weak link. If we can get him to talk, the whole network collapses. Michael shifted, his brow furrowing. He's scared, Olivia. I saw him in the holding area yesterday. He's not the same cocky bastard who punched you. But he's not stupid either. He knows what happens to snitches. Olivia's lips pressed into a thin line. Then we make him see he's got no other choice. The safe house was a fortress of sorts, its windows tinted, its doors reinforced. Emma was safe under federal protection at a location even Olivia didn't know. The thought of her daughter, vibrant and fearless, kept Olivia grounded. She'd spent her life fighting for others' clients too poor to afford justice. Communities chewed up by a system that favored power over truth. Now, it was personal. She gathered the ledger, the flash drive with Carter's recorded conversation, and a stack of complaints against him, all meticulously documented. We go to the hearing, she said. We put it all on the record. No backroom deals, no compromises. Sarah raised an eyebrow. You're painting a target on your back, Judge. Olivia's eyes met hers, unblinking. It's already there. The Fulton County Courthouse was a circus. By 10 a.m., reporters crowded the steps, their cameras flashing like lightning. Protesters chanted, their signs a mosaic of demands. No justice, no peace, and hold Carter accountable. Counter-protesters, some with police union badges pinned to their shirts, shouted back, their voices laced with anger. Olivia arrived. Under escort, Michael and 2 U.S. Marshals flanking her. The air was thick with tension, the kind that could ignite with a single spark. Inside, the courtroom was packed journalists, activists, city officials, and a handful of nervous attorneys. Rachel Turner stood at the prosecution table, her face a mask of composure, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Across the room, a man in a tailored gray suit sat quietly, his name tag reading Elliot Pierce. State Ethics Board. Olivia recognized him immediately, hatchet man sent to contain the damage. She took her seat, not on the bench, but in the witness box, a citizen. Today, not a judge. The hearing began with a bang. The presiding judge, Margaret Cole, a stern woman with a reputation for fairness, called for order as murmurs rippled through the gallery. Olivia was sworn in, her voice steady as she recounted the assault. On August 7, 2025, I was struck in the face by Sergeant James Carter in this very courtroom, she said, her words clear and deliberate. He didn't know I was a judge. He didn't care. To him, I was just a black woman in his way. The room hushed, the weight of her statement settling over the crowd. She held up the ledger, its pages marked with highlighters. But this isn't about one punch. It's about a system that protects men like Carter, a system of money, influence, and silence. This ledger documents payments from Vanguard Security to city officials, including Assistant District Attorney Rachel Turner and Senator Paul Grayson, to dismiss complaints and bury evidence. The gallery erupted. Reporters typed furiously, their laptops clacking like gunfire. Turner stood, her voice sharp. "Objection, Your Honor. This is speculation, not evidence. Judge Harper is using this hearing to push a personal vendetta." Judge Cole's gavel slammed twice. Overruled. "Ms. Harper, continue." Olivia's eyes locked on Turner's for a moment, then returned to the ledger. These payments coincide with dismissed cases against Sergeant Carter 7 in the last 10 years. Witnesses intimidated, body cam footage erased, complaints vanished. And every time, Ms. Turner's signature was on the dismissal. Turner's face paled, but she said nothing. Olivia turned to Elliot Pierce. "Mr. Pierce, I'm also submitting evidence of a $500,000 donation from a Vanguard-linked PAC to Mayor Richard Lawson's re-election campaign, funneled through a shell company in Delaware. And there's more, a name you won't find in the public record: Marcus Vaughn." The room exploded again, shouts drowning out the gavel. Ethan Brooks, seated in the back, scribbled notes, his hands shaking with adrenaline. He'd risked everything to get that ledger to Olivia, and now it was tearing the city apart. Judge Cole called for order, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Ms. Harper, these are serious allegations. Do you have corroborating evidence?" Olivia nodded, sliding the flash drive across the table. "This contains a recording of Sergeant Carter and Ms. Turner discussing how to handle a witness. In a 2023 case, it also contains emails linking Vanguard to Marcus Vaughn, who now operates as a consultant for the mayor's office." Pierce's face was unreadable, but his pen had stopped moving. Turner stood again, her voice trembling with controlled fury. "This is a witch hunt, Your Honor. Judge Harper is compromised. She was the victim of the alleged assault. She can't be impartial." Olivia's response was calm but devastating. "I'm not here as a judge, Ms. Turner. I'm here as a witness to a system that's been broken for too long. If my impartiality is in question, then let's question yours. Why did you dismiss a 2022 case against Carter despite video evidence of him assaulting a teenager? Why did $15,000 from Vanguard end up in your account 3 days later?" The room went silent, the accusation hanging like smoke. Turner's mouth opened, then closed, her composure cracking. Judge Cole leaned forward. "Ms. Turner, you'll have your chance to respond. Ms. Harper, do you have anything else?" Olivia nodded, her voice steady. "Yes, Your Honor. I'm submitting a formal request for a federal investigation into Vanguard Security, its ties to city officials, and the dismissal of complaints against Atlanta police officers. I'm also voluntarily recusing myself from Sergeant Carter's case, not because I'm compromised, but because I want this process to be unimpeachable." The gallery buzzed, the weight of her words sinking in. She stepped down from the witness box, her head high, and walked out of the courtroom, the crowd parting like a sea. Michael followed close behind, his hand on her elbow, guiding her through the throng of reporters. Outside, the chants of protesters grew louder, their voices a chorus of hope and rage in her chambers. Olivia collapsed into a chair, the adrenaline fading. Sarah was already there, her laptop open to a live feed of the protests. "You shook the city," Sarah said, her voice tinged with awe. "Grayson's people are already spinning this as a smear campaign." Olivia's lips curved into a grim smile. Let them spin. The truth doesn't bend. Her phone buzzed a message from Ethan Brooks. "They're following me again. Be careful." Olivia's heart sank. Ethan had been her lifeline, the one who'd risked everything to get her the ledger. She texted back, "Get to the safe house, stay low." Then she called Carla Reyes, the FBI agent. "Carla, I need protection for Ethan Brooks. He's a key witness. Carla's voice was clipped, but professional. We're on it. But Olivia? You need to know Grayson's team is lawyering up. They're going to hit you hard. Olivia's grip tightened on the phone. Let them try. By afternoon, the city was in chaos. News outlets ran wall-to-wall coverage of the hearing, with pundits debating whether Olivia was a hero or a rogue. Social media was a battlefield, with hashtag Justice for Harper trending alongside vicious attacks from anonymous accounts. A local blog posted a doctored photo of Olivia at a protest, claiming she was a radical activist with ties to extremist groups. Olivia ignored it, focusing on the next move. She met with Sarah and Carla in a secure office downtown. The ledgers spread out between them. We've got enough to indict Turner and Carter, Carla said, her eyes scanning the pages. But Grayson and Vaughn are slippery. We need someone to flip. Olivia nodded. Carter's our best shot. He's scared and he's alone. Lean on him. That evening, Olivia visited Carter in his holding cell. He looked smaller without his uniform, his eyes hollow, his hands cuffed to the table. You're destroying me, he said, his voice low and bitter. Olivia sat across from him, her posture straight. You destroyed yourself, James, but you can still do something right. Tell me about Vaughn. Who's he working for? Carter's jaw clenched, his eyes darting to the door. You don't get it, do you? Vaughn's got people everywhere. If I talk, I'm dead. Olivia leaned forward, her voice soft but unyielding. If you don't talk, you're going to prison for the rest of your life. And Vaughn won't save you, he's already saving himself. Carter's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. I don't know everything, he muttered. But I know Vaughn handles the money. He's the one who makes problems disappear. Olivia left the cell, her mind racing. Carter's confession was a start, but it wasn't enough. She needed to connect Vaughn to Grayson, and she needed it fast. Back at the safe house, she found Ethan waiting, his face pale, but his eyes fierce. I got something else, he said, handing her a thumb drive. My source came through again. It's a video Vaughn meeting with Grayson's campaign manager. In a parking garage last month. They're talking about cleaning up the Carter mess. Olivia's heart pounded. You're sure? Ethan nodded. It's real. But Judge, they know I have it. I'm not safe. Olivia placed a hand on his shoulder. You're under federal protection now. They can't touch you. The video was grainy but damning. Vaughn, a wiry man with a predator's smile, stood in a dimly lit garage, handing a briefcase to a man Olivia recognized as Grayson's campaign manager, Daniel Hayes. Their voices were muffled but clear enough. Carter's. A liability, Vaughn said. We'll handle it, but it'll cost. Hayes nodded, his voice curt. The senator wants it done quietly. No loose ends. Olivia's blood ran cold. This was the smoking gunna direct link to Grayson. She forwarded the video to Carla, who called back within minutes. This is huge, Carla said. We're moving on, Vaughn, tonight. But Olivia, you need to lay low. They're desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. The next morning, Atlanta woke to a bombshell. Marcus Vaughn had been arrested in a pre-dawn raid, charged with conspiracy, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The news sent shockwaves through the city, with protests swelling outside City Hall. Olivia watched the coverage from the safe house, her heart heavy but resolute. Turner had resigned, citing personal reasons, but the rumor was she was cutting a plea deal. Carter was cooperating, spilling names in exchange for a lighter sentence, and Grayson, the untouchable senator, was facing a federal investigation. But the victory felt hollow. Olivia knew the machine wasn't dead, was wounded. And wounded beasts were dangerous. She met with Judge Thomas Bennett that afternoon, a last-minute request he'd made through a mutual colleague. Bennett, her former mentor, sat across from her in a quiet restaurant, his face lined with regret. "Olivia," he said, his voice soft, "you've gone too far. This city needs stability, not chaos. Grayson's a good man, he's just caught in a bad system." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "A good man doesn't pay to bury crimes, Thomas. And you signed off on 3 of Carter's dismissals. Why?" Bennett's shoulders sagged. "I thought I was protecting the system." "You don't understand the pressure," Olivia cut him off. "I understand perfectly. You chose power over justice." She stood, leaving him with his untouched coffee. The betrayal stung, but it only fueled her fire. By evening, the tide was turning. The Department of Justice announced a task force to investigate Atlanta's police department and its ties to Vanguard. Over 200 past convictions were flagged for review, many involving Carter and his allies. The governor called for a bipartisan reform commission, and the mayor's office was under siege from reporters. Olivia returned to the safe house, exhausted, but unbowed. Sarah was there, poring over the latest evidence. "You did it," Sarah said, her voice soft with admiration. "You took down the machine." Olivia shook her head. "I didn't take it down. I just turned on the light." The next day, Olivia stood before the State Judiciary Review Board, her blazer sharp, her voice clear. "I'm resigning my position as judge," she said, the room gasping. "Not because I've lost faith in the law, but because I believe in its future. I've exposed the rot, but it's up to new hands to rebuild." A board member, a gray-haired woman named Evelyn Grant, stood. "Judge Harper, your actions have inspired a movement. You could lead it." Olivia smiled faintly. "Movements don't need monuments. They need momentum." She turned to leave, pausing to add, "Make sure the next person in my seat doesn't have to fight this hard to be heard." 2 weeks later, Olivia sat on the porch of her family's home in Decatur, the air cool for August. Emma sat beside her, her journalism textbook open on her lap. "You're famous now, Mom," Emma said, her eyes sparkling. Olivia laughed, a rare sound. "Infamous, maybe." Emma leaned against her shoulder. "You made them see. Mom, you made them listen." Olivia pulled her close, her gaze on the horizon. "I made them look, sweetheart. Listening, that's up to us all." The city was still healing, its scars deep but not fatal. Olivia had lit a fire, and though she'd stepped away from the bench, its glow would guide the way forward. The machine was crumbling, and in its place something new was rising, something built on truth.